Hello students, this is Siddharth Mehta. Now one student asked me a doubt on weakening the argument question, and I thought that I will make a video on this doubt because I have seen that many students ask me similar type of doubt. I mean a particular kind of question, and many students ask me a similar kind of doubt. So let me tell you how to solve such type of questions. So let us begin without wasting any time. This was the question that a student sent me and asked me about what could be the answer, right? So let us read the question first and foremost. Okay, so it says that the higher the average fat intake among the residents of a country, the higher the incidence of cancer in that country. The lower the average fat intake, the lower the incidence of cancer. So it talks about there is a correlation between average fat intake and cancer, right? So there is a correlation between this, higher chances of cancer or higher incidence of cancer. So individuals who want to reduce their risk of cancer should reduce their fat intake. So this is the premise which is given, that average fat intake and cancer, incidence of cancer, are correlated. And the conclusion is given in the last line. Conclusion says that if you want to reduce the risk of cancer, obviously reduce the intake of fat. This is what the conclusion says. So which one of the following, if true, most weaken the argument? Now there comes the important part, right? So just go through the option and you can mark your own answer, and then I will tell you how to solve the question. Now, see, understand that weakening the argument doesn't mean that you should negate whatever is mentioned as the in the conclusion. So many times students commit this mistake that they look for the option, and there would be one option which is direct contradiction of what is mentioned in the conclusion, and they will say this is weakening the argument. No, this is not weakening the argument. Weakening the argument means attacking the logic. Now let me tell you that many times even in the exams they give this kind of option, and they don't give an option which attacks the logic. So in that case, of course, you can mark an option which is in direct contradiction of the conclusion that is being drawn, but only when there is no other option which attacks the logic. Normally there should be an option that attacks the logic. So let us see that, and you will always find that in GMAT or LSAT questions they have that option. Now how to attempt this question? Please understand, in weakening the argument type of question, this is one common type of question when there is a causal relationship given. Causal relationship is given here. So here there is a causal relationship, that there is a relationship between average fat intake and cancer. That is, if average fat intake is higher, cancer chances or the incidence of cancer is higher in a country. So there is a causal relationship given. Now when you have to weaken it, attack the causal relationship. That is important. Now how can you attack this causal relationship? There are three ways to do that. The most common way is saying that it is not because of average fat intake cancer incidence of cancer is there, but it is because of some other reason. So one common way is other reason. See, we want to weaken this correlation, right? So this relation given between average fat intake and cancer, if I can break this link, that should be my objective, breaking this link. If I can break this link, then my argument gets weakened. So one way to break this link is telling that it is not because of average fat intake, but it is because of some other reason. That is one way of doing it. The other way of doing it, say a few times. Now the common type, I have told that there is some other reason which would be given in the option. Few times they can also say that it is not because of average fat intake that the incidence of cancer are higher, but in fact the relationship is other way around. When the cancer is high, average fat intakes become higher. Is some that is other way of looking at it. So here it was saying this is a cause and this is an effect. So if you reverse, and if any option can say that this is there exists a reverse relationship, even that weakens. But the better way to weaken the argument is giving some other reason. So this is what you need to do in the causal relationship. Now let us look at the option. Which one of the following, if true, most weaken? The difference in average fat intake between the countries are often due to varying makeup of traditional diets. So this doesn't tell me anything. This doesn't give me any reason that why cancer could be higher in countries. It simply tells that average fat intakes reason is traditional diet. So this is definitely doesn't help me in any case. This simply tells that why few countries are taking higher fat intake. It is because of traditional diet. So perhaps the cause of average fat intake is given. So one gives the cause of average fat intake because of traditional diet, but it doesn't break my link. So not the answer. The countries with a higher fat intake tend to be among the wealthiest in the world. Once again, another reason of higher fat intake is given. Similarly, similar to A, another reason or another cause of average fat intake is given. So this can't be the answer. See, cancer is prominent cause of death in countries with a low average fat intake. Wow, what a tempting answer. This looks a very good choice, but don't mark it. Let us read the other things. It doesn't break the causal link although. D, the countries with higher fat intake are also the countries with highest levels of environment pollution. Now, this breaks the causal relationship. Why this breaks the causal relationship? Because it says that the countries where fat intake is higher, there is other thing also which is higher, and that is pollution. Now, it is quite possible that because of the pollution, there are higher incidences of cancer. That's why this is the right answer. But we'll compare and I will tell you why C is not the right answer. Let us look at E first, which is easy to eliminate. An individual resident of a country whose population has high average fat intake may have a diet with low fat intake. Now, it just talks about one individual of a country that he may have a low fat intake, but it doesn't help me break the link. So this can't be the answer. Now, why C is not the answer? And why D is the answer? As I told you, D breaks this link. It gives me some other reason of why there are chances of cancer. But you can say, sir, C is directly opposing what is mentioned in the passage. One, don't mark that because we don't have to find something which is anti of what is being asked in the passage. We have to find the logic of weakening the argument. Second, and it may look that it is directly opposite of what is mentioned in the passage. In fact, it is not. Let us see what it talks about. Cancer is prominent cause of death in countries with a low average fat intake. One reason why this is not the answer is that the passage talks about the incidence of cancer and not the death, reason of death. So that is, there is a difference. Of course, the subject of cancer is common, but the passage talks about that there are more number of cancer patients in such countries. Nothing is being talked about that death. So if you are saying that this is something in opposite of what is mentioned in the passage, it is not. It is talking about two different things. So one reason is that. The other reason is that, yes, I can understand that in these countries where average fat intake is low, cancer is a prominent cause of death. So say 20% of the death in, suppose, country A, which has low average fat intake. Country A has low average fat intake. 20% of the death happens because of cancer. 20% of the death happens because of cancer. It is a low fat intake country. But I mean, nothing is being talked about what happens in those countries where average fat intake is higher. So suppose, let me take country B, and in country B where average fat intake is high, here it was low, average fat intake is high. In those countries, nothing is being mentioned. So let me tell you that the cancer is the prominent cause of death, and 40% of the death is because of cancer. Now, because this kind of information was not available, and I cannot draw comparison, it is quite possible, yes, cancer is a prominent cause of death in country with low average fat intake, but in the countries where average fat intake is higher, it is much more prominent and strong. So I don't know. That's why C is not the answer and D is the answer. So I hope you have understood how to solve the causal relationship weakening the argument question, right? Thank you so much, guys.